So looking at graphing trigonometric functions, so we have to find the amplitude and period, and we're given a question for y is 4 cosine 3 theta. So we have to remember that we have y, the amplitude is a, and then we have bx, and this is how we work out the period. So a is the amplitude, and b, we need to do pi divided by b. Okay, let's say that's to find the period, or so it's 2 pi divided by b, or 360 divided by b. And this will actually give us the period. So if we look at this question, 4 is the amplitude. So we can say the amplitude, and it's always a positive. So this is going to be 4. And to find the b value, the period, we're going to do, so let's say period. So to find the period of this function, we're going to do 360 divided by 3, which will give us 120 degrees. So our amplitude is 4 and our period is 120. So the guided practice. So question 1, y is equal to a cosine a half theta. And we need to find the amplitude and period of the function. So if we look here, the amplitude, which is a, is equal to 1, because it's 1 cosine. And to find the period, so the period will be 360 divided by a half. Now we can rewrite this as 360 divided by a half, which is the same as 360 times 2. So the answer would be 720 degrees. So the next question. So we have y is 3 sine 5 theta, and we need to find the amplitude and period. So if you look here, this is the amplitude. So the amplitude is equal to 3. And to find the period, okay, we're working in degrees, so we'll leave it. We have 360 divided by 5. Which is 72 degrees. So we have an amplitude of 3, and then we have our period of 72. Okay, so we have a question here. Y is 2 cosine theta. So the amplitude is 2, and the period is 360 divided by 1, because this is 1, and the period is 360. So we have an amplitude of 2 and a period of 360. Okay, so this question here, y is a half sine 2 theta. So our amplitude, if we look here, is a half. So amplitude is a half. And to find the period, b is 2. So we're going to do 360 divided by 2. So the period is 180 degrees. Okay, so if you have a look at this question, so 5 sine, so the amplitude is equal to 5. And to find the period, 360 divided by 2/3. So we can rewrite as 360 divided by 2/3, which is 360 multiplied by 3 divided by 2. So that will be 540 degrees. So we have an amplitude of 5, and this would be 540. So we're going to look at graphing sine and cosine functions. The first question that we have says y is 2 sine theta. So this graph, the amplitude is 2, which means it's being stretched vertically. So it's gone from 1 up to 2. And the period, we need to work out the period. So that will be 360 divided by 1. So we have a period as well of 360. So we need to look at a graph. So using Geogebra, I've changed the sliders. So I've got A is 2, and the period we had was 1, which is B is 1. And you can see our graph here for the cycle. This actually goes down. It starts at 0. So we have one cycle, one full cycle, just up to 2 pi. Okay, so if we were to draw this ourselves, to find the y-intercept, the x-intercepts, this is the sine graph, so it's 0, 0. We will use a half multiplied by 360 divided by b for the x, and for the y coordinate we will have 180,0. So the period, if we work this out, so a half times 360, and we have we're dividing by b, so this will be 360,0. So we know the the x-intercepts are going to be 180, 0, and 360, 0. And if we look at our graph, we can see that we have 0, 180 for pi, and then we have the 360. So it's 180, 0, and 360, 0 for pi and for 2 pi. So let's look. So looking at y is cos 4 theta. First thing we need to do is find the amplitude. So the amplitude is always positive, and this is going to be 1, because we have 1 cosine. And then to find the period, this is 360 or 2 pi, so 360 divided by 4, which is going to be 90 degrees. Now, if we were to find the x-intercept for cosine, so we're going to do a quarter multiplied by 360 divided by b, and this is going to be at 0. So a quarter of 360 divided by 4, 22.50. So that's our first intercept. And the second one will be at 3/4 multiplied by 360 divided by 0, which will be at 67.5, 0. So this is our graph. So if we look for the intercepts for the first cycle, we will see that we have at 22.50 will be our first intercept, and our second intercept will be at 67.5. Now this graph is in pi, Okay, so guided practice. If we look at this question, y is 3 cosine theta. So we need the amplitude. So first of all, this is always positive, so the amplitude is 3. And then to find the period, we're going to look at 360 divided by b, which is 1. So the period is 360. And then we're going to look at the x-intercepts. So this is where the graph cuts the x-axis. And when we do the cosine, this will be a quarter times 360 divided by b, which is 1. And that's going to be comma 0. So this is going to be a quarter of 360. So 90 comma 0 is the first. And the second intercept for cosine will be at 3/4 360 divided by b, which is 360. So this is going to be at 270. So our graph will cut the x-axis at 90, 0 and 270, 0. And if we look at the graph for cosine, with 3 and a period of 1, we'll see that it cuts at 90, which is here. And it cuts again at 270. Okay, so looking at this graph, our amplitude is a half. So this is a half, or 0.5. And then our period will be 360 divided by b, which is 2. So our period is 180 degrees. And to find the x-intercept, where it cuts the axes, so we're looking at sine. So this time we're going to use the intercept at 0, 0, because this is where the sine graph starts. So we'll have a half multiplied by 360 divided by 2. And this is at comma 0. So this will be a half of 360, 180, a half of 180 is 90, so that is 90, 0. And the second is at 360 divided by 2, comma 0, which will be at 180, comma 0. And if we look here, this is 0.5 sine, or half sine, and then we have 2. So our graph starts off at 0, 0, and then it cuts through the x-axis at 90, and then again at 180.